well documented was that over a period of time, after about 100 monkeys figured out that they could do this, all of a sudden it was like a Windows update. Every computer downloaded the new software, and literally in 1 week, all of a sudden all the monkeys on all the islands are doing this at the same time. It's very fascinating and very true. Now, the data point that my whole convergence film is built around is the idea that you can have 7,000 people meditating together under one roof, and that the worldwide indexes of crime, fatalities, and terrorist activity decreases by 72%. Now, we are already creating that kind of a coherent consciousness field here by the simple fact that we're laughing, we're having a good time, we're having fun, we're together, and we're all focusing our attention on one thing. That's why festivals like Woodstock, it's not just a concert with a bunch of hippies running around getting high and being naked. It actually changed society, changed the world. It started on an energetic level. It precipitated through the physical, but it was also an energetic event. These events are not just random. These events change things. We are changing LA right now by the fact that we're gathering together doing this, and I believe that, and many others like it, is a strong part of why LA did not have earthquakes that have destroyed it. Okay? That's very real. Earthquakes and all these earth changes are very much related to the consciousness field. So, this is a very circumlocuted answer to the question, but the point is that we are here to basically stave off this problem that was happening in order to create a sufficient pressure of awakening energy to be able to get people to find a path. Because all we really want to do is get them to choose love a little more often than anger and manipulation. So that maybe once in a while they'll take responsibility in that relationship, and it's not going to be that every single time that they feel bad that they make it their partner's fault. Maybe once in a while you're going to want to help somebody rather than cut them off on the highway when you're driving down the road. You know, we all have these habit patterns that we get stuck in where we say, oh, it doesn't matter, you know, and in fact it's even more dangerous when you're in a city. When you live in a city, it's a lot easier to sort of see people as in the way. And you don't want to look at them, and you just want to make sure you don't bump into them. They're like trees, you know. It's in rural areas where you're more apt to be able to look at someone in the eye when you're walking down the street and smile and say hello, and you're not going to be seen as like a pervert or a psycho killer or something. So when we're dealing with the concept of indigo children and so forth, all we're really dealing with is children who have a stronger connection to their ET heritage. Extraterrestrial beings are just like us, it's just they're at a different frequency level. They're very much capable of incarnating as people. Even in the Bible, some of the stuff that the original Council of Nicaea in 325 AD stripped out of the Bible, one of the things that we lost from the Bible is the knowledge and the awareness from Jesus that angels incarnate as people, and that they go through human lives not knowing they're angels. That was originally part of the Bible. It was lost. Well, why do you think that would be? Think about it. You have a government that's trying to create a political religion. You don't want to tell people that there might be an angel walking around on the earth. You want to have one Son, one Father, and one Holy Ghost, and make it an airtight trinity that nobody can get through. So there's only one way to get there. So that's one of the things we lost. Anyway, very circumlocuted answer to your question. Let's have another one. Who's ready? There you go.
Hey, do you believe that you're being remotely viewed 24/7 by the Family of Light?
By the Family of Light. Define the Family of Light.
The Galactic Federation, or just the...
Oh, okay. This is like the Santa Claus thing. He knows if you've been naughty, he knows if you've been nice. Do I believe that I'm being remotely viewed 24/7 by the Galactic Confederation, whatever you want to call it? Absolutely. In fact, since these guys are outside of time, and since we are literally less than 5 years away from the vortex, which does appear to be a discrete harmonic shift that's going to happen, more than ever, every single spare stitch of a second of your life is being intimately analyzed and planned out so that inspiration and intuition and all these things can come to you and happen in such a way as to promote your evolution. I believe that the more that you are willing to look for synchronistic guidance and symbolic guidance, the more it will happen. That's why you can encode guidance basically by saying to your higher self that if you see a triple-digit synchronicity on the clock, that you're going to accept that as a synchronicity. And it's a good idea to stop blowing off these things and say, well, isn't that a coincidence? Coincidences are not just random. They are the result of hard work by a bevy of angelic beings that are working their tails off in order to be able to get you to see between the cracks of physical reality, to see a greater meta-reality that exists outside of physical space and time. That's a very real phenomenon, and there's no reason why you shouldn't take advantage of it and avail yourself of that. We have another question? Yes?
What's your take on the Planet X thing then? Because you're like, oh, I'm so sick of hearing about that.
Well, you can see how enthusiastic I am about that question. Planet X. Well, oh man, I don't know how much I want to go into this. First of all, the interplanetary climate change data, which I put together for the first time, now obviously in the Black Ops they've done it, but as far as anybody in the public domain, I was the one to put together this stuff in the first place. Right before 9/11, I published an interview with Win Free, who ended up co-authoring this book with me. By the way, this is not just about Edgar Cayce reincarnating. This has, the first part of the book is the story of Edgar Cayce and the reincarnation, the Law of One series, Atlantis, alleged past life of Edgar as Rata, which was this high priest in Atlantis that built the Great Pyramid. Then part 2 is all the readings that I've done, some of the most inspirational spiritual readings. Part 3 is a detailed scientific analysis of ascension, which goes through DNA evolution, which goes through interplanetary climate change, all this stuff. This whole book originated from a single interview that Wynn did with me that we published like 3 days before 9/11. That interview was then stripped of its references and the links to the various websites. It was stripped of author credit to me, and it was ripped off by a bunch of channelers who basically put their names on it and then attributed all the research to Russian scientists. This article, it has gotten more popular than anything I've ever done in my whole life. And I never got credit for it. It's mirrored now, the last time I checked, 1,200 different websites have this article on it. It went viral, it was seen by millions and millions and millions of people. The Planet X movement grabbed this one email, which was largely forwarded on emails as well as websites, and they stole all that data, and then they all wrote books about it and profited off of it. And because they stole it, they took out the part that explained what I was showing you just a little bit of, which is the fact that it's galactic energy and has nothing to do with an outside planet orbiting our solar system. All that stuff was removed because it was too difficult to understand. People didn't get it. They took the Planet X model because it was a lot simpler and easier to understand. Well, it's not true. So, to say that Planet X could change the climate of the entire solar system is like saying that you have a refrigerator magnet in your hand, and you're going to put that refrigerator magnet on the side of your car in neutral and pull the car with the magnet. That's about how stupid it is, because if you think about it, 99.86% of all the mass in the solar system is the sun. The planets are like itsy-bitsy specks. Even if Planet X is larger than the size of Jupiter, it's like nothing. It's like a pebble of sand, okay? To think that the gravitational effect of that is going to be sufficient to cause the sun's solar output to increase by 300, 400% in such a short time is utterly laughable. And I can go on and on and on debunking Planet X, but that's enough.
What I kind of meant was like how the moon affects the tiles.
Sure. I'm not saying that she says that.
How much is it really going to affect us? Do we need to be even concerned?
No. First of all, that goes into a deeper layer than I was going to go into, but I'll do it very briefly. The sun itself actually has a movement on the surface. The whole surface of the sun expands and contracts like this. And it does so, it's like beating like a drum. The sun has wavelengths that are created by that, and those wavelengths in turn determine how energy is moving through the solar system, and that energy in turn, if you want to unplug that for me, that'd be great. That energy in turn is determining where the planets are positioned in the solar system. So what that means is that the planetary orbits themselves are actually being caused by these pressure waves that the sun is generating as a result of its own oscillating behavior. Now where I'm going with this is the idea that any sufficiently large gravitating mass in the solar system is going to be captured by these waves and will then be forced into an orbit which is concentric with the other orbits. One of the biggest problems of the Planet X model is that Pluto now is not even, Pluto got demoted, it's not considered a planet anymore. Everybody remember that? Now they call it a planetesimal, right? Well, the reason why is because it's too small. It's too small for the sun's harmonic energy field to capture it into that typical orbit that we would normally see. So instead of it being in a regular orbit, it's slightly elliptical, but it still has a round shape. So the idea, the only thing that has these funky orbits is little bitty comets, which are little chunks of snow and ice, basically. In some cases, plasma. The idea that a gigantic planet is going to have this elliptical orbit that's going to cross through the other orbits is bullshit. Can't happen. It cannot happen. The reason why is that the sun is giving off levity as well as gravity. It's not, if the sun was only gravity, right, then why wouldn't all the planets collide into the sun? Think about that one. If the sun is such a huge thing and the planets are just little specks of sand, what in the world is stopping them from colliding into the center? It's stupid. It's because the sun is putting out energy that's holding the planets in place. And that's why you have Io over here that has a surface 200% hotter in 10 years, 3 times hotter than the surface of Mercury, which is over here. Because the sun's waves from here create this band of energy over here, which is heating up the planet here, because the energy conduit is going this way. So this energy is strong enough to hold these planets in place, to heat it up 3 times hotter than Mercury. There's no way that a big planet is going to be able to keep crossing through the inner orbits of the solar system. It's just impossible. It's just that we have such a primitive understanding of astrophysics that most people are not capable of debunking the theory to the degree that it actually can be if you understand how it really works. That's a very egg-headed explanation. Sorry for those who didn't need that much data. Go ahead.
Make this the last question.
Yeah.
Oh, I forgot.
So you were one of those guys up there that was, hey, man, we're going to put them all together, they're going to be so happy.
Every 2 minutes I had a question, but like either you answered it or I forgot.
Well, we do have time for one more. Oh! All right. What's the first letter of your last name? Everybody raise their hand.
Huh?
First letter of your last name.
R.
H.
A.
B.
P.
Okay, I'll take the A.
The question was just what you touched on it a little bit in your presentation, and it had to do with the triangular shapes within the planets, or specifically the tetrahedron, or
The geometry.
The geometry, and why those points happen on the sun and on Jupiter, and there's like a hexagonal thing happening on Saturn on the.
Yeah, you know about all this. Well, okay. So this is stuff that you're going to get at the next talk. And again, if you have more questions and you do plan on coming to the next talk, I'll be more than happy to answer the rest of them. I only really kind of, as I said, popped the lid on the science. There's a lot more to explore. I do want to give you guys time to do the marketing and the networking while you still are here, because we did run late. And Debbie said that was okay, so you can direct all your gunfire towards her. Anyway, geometry is a very simple thing, actually. There's 3 phases of vibration. There's light, there's sound, and there's geometry. If you take the white keys on the piano, those are called diatonic frequencies. Those are the most pure sound frequencies. They vibrate at a particular number of cycles per second, all of which are harmonic numbers. So like A, the concert A is 440, which is actually 432. All of the various numbers that make those white keys in the piano sound good happen because there's a perfect divisible number of vibrations for each second, okay? Now, you take those same numbers of the sounds and you multiply them many times over, the relationships to each other, and you get the vibrational relationship between the colors of the rainbow. Very few people know this. This is Pythagorean science, okay? This goes back to the ancient mystery schools. There is a perfect correlation between sound that we hear and color that we see. The vibrations are identical. Color is simply a higher octave of sound. But it's the same exact substance vibrating, just at a much higher level of energy. Now what happens if you take a container of water and you vibrate it at a certain pure sound frequency, one of these frequencies we're talking about? Well, if you normally just have regular water, you're not going to see anything. But then let's change it up a little bit. Let's take some particles and put it in the water, like particles of sand, fine little particles. If you do that, then what you're going to see is these geometric patterns forming in the water, and they're perfect. They're beautiful geometries that form in the water. This gets into Dr. Masaru Emoto and all the work with like people meditating on the water, and then these beautiful crystals form. That's what this is all based on, okay? It's geometry of thought. So, I've used the analogy before of rock candy. If you take a jar of sugar water and it's super saturated, meaning you can't mix any more sugar into it or else it just stays in a powder form. If you do that and then you take a string and you dip it into the water, crystals start growing on the string. You pull it out, you get rock candy. That's sugar that's crystallized onto that string. So what I want you to think about is the idea that this fluid-like energy is around us, but we can't see it. We're like fish inside the water. We don't know that the water is there. The only way that we can ever detect that it's there is when it crystallizes. Once it crystallizes, it forms what we think of as physical matter. When we look at me being over here and that being over there, we think that these two crystals are all that there is. We don't realize that this is just the crystallization of a field that exists between the two of us. That's what DNA is. When we look at stars in the galaxy, we think that there's empty space between these stars, but that's just because those are where the crystals are forming. The actual energy field exists everywhere. So geometry is actually the gateway to higher dimensions. That's why when you look at where this geometry forms on planets, at those particular node points you have multidimensional things happening. You have wormholes, time travel. I'm going to show you 3 different types of dinosaur creatures that are traveling through time to get to us at the next talk. Brontosaurus, Pterosaurus, and Plesiosaurus, which is your Loch Ness Monster. So anyway, geometry is a huge subject. The next talk, you're going to see the slides. You're going to get a lot more detail on that, as well as I said, we're going to have the practices of ascension and so forth. So Debbie, did you want to have closing remarks?
Well, just yes. I want to thank David for being so generous with his time. And I know we ran over, and thank you all for your patience, but I think we all agree it was all fascinating and well worth it. So thank you. What we're going to do is have David over here. If anybody would like to purchase the book, feel free to come on over. And we're also going to be having a sign-up list if people would like to sign up for the workshop. And we'll also do door prizes. So if you want to take out your green ticket, we'll pull the winning numbers for the door prize. Thank you.